great differences in brain development of each of these main stages, and she would have made use of this information to go with her advised way of learning, and the brain information so far fits in very well with Montessori stages. Stage 1. Montessori said that if she had her way, teacher training would ideally begin with a student being at the birth of a baby. She said to me that it would make for respect and compassion for every single person we taught. This first stage is when the frontal lobes, it's an extraordinary stage, the frontal lobes of the brain absorb the child's environment. So by 3, he sits like an Indian or an African or American or whatever. He greets like that culture. He can already speak that language without a single lesson on the grammar. I have a theory about those remarkable savants, those children who show this prodigious memory. For instance, can tell you immediately, if you give them the day of the week that you were born, and they can tell you instantly what day it was. If you tell them the date, they can tell you, whatever your age, what day it was. And some of them are remarkable with art. They can see a building, go away and draw it in absolute detail. And there are some who have that musical ability. Listen once to a Beethoven or any great composer, and they will go away and, if they're musical, play it completely. I think that the rest of the brain is damaged, and that frontal lobe goes on advancing and allows them to photographically take in. There is a wonderful new book by an autistic grown man that I've just read. It's very remarkable, by someone called Tennant. The rest of the brain is probably damaged, and the frontal lobes go on performing and absorbing information like a photograph. For our children at this stage, they absorb the whole of the environment. It's no use saying you should always be tidy if we open our cupboard and it's terribly untidy and everything drops out. It's absorbed absolutely the way of life that we show. For our children in the Montessori school, there's constant free choice of sensorial materials at this stage with free movement. Montessori, in Education for a New World, says, intelligence is developed through movement. Mind and movement belong to the same unit. They are 2 parts of a single cycle. The will is that primal energy without which the psychic life cannot exist. This is the important thing about Montessori school. The child's own will is used again and again with great discipline. Montessori materials were devised by her to be the key which the child can then use to understand and manipulate the environment. Maria Montessori was sometimes very disappointed when the knowledge imparted by her keys to the environment at a certain period of sensitivity were not used, and encouraged the child to go on and use them to discover from that basic key. Montessori said to me, sounding very, very exasperated, "It's just as if a plane ran up and down the runway and never took off." Those are keys to use for the children to use, for them to be able to really go into their own environment and discover. There is a mistake that hinders this with the leaf-shaped cabinet in England. Now, I don't know if it's so here. Montessori made it in India, and they're all the shapes of Indian leaves. To be a key, they should be the main shapes of the leaves around the child, so that it sees then and can go and then discover what its name is and so on. He then becomes alerted to similar shapes within the environment. Language always comes as an adjunct to each piece of sensorial material, and this is when the names of local trees are asked for and given when the child finds a leaf of the same shape and now wants to know its name. This is a plain taking off. All Montessori children should gradually know the names of the flora and fauna in their own locality. There is a wonderful array of materials to entice the children. There are those marvelous grammar materials and grammar games that help children know the foundation of their own language, and then they can enrich their own writing after putting the grammar symbols that they now know over different writers, sometimes over nursery rhymes, and later over writers like Conrad and Dickens, and they see the great adjectival writing of some of them, and then they put them over their own writing, and they love it when it forms a beautiful pattern. The maths material is amazing and was the grounding for 2 pupils who came through my school and were chosen to be in the Maths International Olympiad, representing Britain, competing with 145 nations. John Ricard and Peter. There is easy numerical understanding and manipulation due to the early bead materials. They break up the numbers easily, and the children go to make so easily numbers to 10. They know them very early on. This makes addition and subtraction so quick in the future. And algebra can be introduced at this early stage because you can say, I'll give you a puzzle. 9 add A equals 10. Can you tell me what A is? 1, they say. And you say, right. I'll give you another one and you give me a letter. 8 plus, and they may say Z. All right, 8 plus Z equals 10. Tell me what Z is. And they say 2. And they've done their first algebra equation very early. It's a lovely thing to see. The multiplication tables with bead materials and the ease of squaring and cubing makes arithmetic greeted with pleasure. Very early, the children work with fractional material and understand the possible makeup and relationships of fractions. Geometry is, of course, met sensorially, and the constructive triangles are very much enjoyed. The geometric cabinet satisfies so much, and then it's a thrill when you see children look up around them and say, oh, rectangle, oh, triangle. You see, they begin to be interested in the environment from the piece of material. The language assimilation is such an important part. Then there are the fascinating timelines with their illustrative cards or little objects to put on one side at the right dates, showing the social history, costume, and on the other side, the battles. The game is to put the items out against their correct dates. They enjoy doing this with masterpiece reproduction cards, complete with artists' names. And I have seen little ones say, oh, that must go there on the timeline because there's a lot of gold in it. They begin to really look at the pictures and understand the approximate dates. They enjoy all the sensorial geography materials, pouring of water to make an island, and seeing a volcano made to erupt. Do you know how to do that? It's great fun. or with definition booklets. Now, those are very important. Small sentences, definition booklets, tiny booklets, but very accurate, that encourage factual reading and analytical clarity of mind. None of your schools or training will encompass everything, but over time, you enrich yourselves as well as your environment. Nothing like teaching to learn, is there? On